excited about our next guest. She is coming from Frankfurt, Germany, where she leads client delivery management for SAP EMA. Ashima Raheja is with us. Hello there, Ashima. Wonderful to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Jose. That was a very powerful introduction, and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
And I'm going to go further, and I'm going to share a little bit more about what an accomplished leader Ashima is. She has over 17 years of experience driving out business outcomes through diligently planning and executing strategies. She has worked in 3 product companies serving small to large enterprises. She's a global leader. She has lived in and worked in India, Canada, Singapore, London, and now coming to us from nearby Frankfurt, Germany. During the last 7 years, Ashima has been driving cloud transformations for her customers' businesses, playing diverse roles of strategy designer, chief operating officer, cloud managed services portfolio head, and most recently, European business leader. Again, Ashima, what a privilege for us to have you sharing your wisdom and expertise with nearly 2,000 of our global leaders today.
Thank you, Jose. Excited, looking forward to it. So, well, with that powerful introduction, this also is an exciting place for me in, because all the experience that we've been making in this, especially the last 1.5 years, this has been very interesting to see how certain businesses that were never for and ready for cloud or going on to the cloud, that how the mindset changes, and also how they're very excited to go onto the cloud, driven by different factors, right? But definitely COVID changed the world, changed our generation, how we are going to proceed in our businesses. Now, I personally have worked like I was introduced. I personally have worked in different capacities and different types of businesses, but one thing that I've seen always is what makes any decision successful is when this is purpose driven. If there is no clear purpose, you'll always struggle with living your ideas or living your strategies, because you always need not just the business outcomes or the values that you want to drive, but also you need people supporting you, people behind you. And if they see a purpose, that is what drives everybody together. So I personally, like I said, I saw that we did have some of these different experiences that started coming in when we start to last year, 2020 onwards, when we started to see the whole world changing around COVID-19. I personally was in the space of a global leadership at that point of time, and we saw that in the cloud managed services business that some of our customers who were very happy with on-premise type of solutions, they started asking about what's in there in the cloud world. Can I go to what type of cloud model they can adopt, and especially for what type of solutions or applications. So not all of their enterprise solutions that they would want to host on cloud, but they would like to take tiny baby steps. And most that we saw was in the area of e-commerce. And that is, we probably have experienced that in one of the other areas, that e-commerce took the most important role in the last 1.5 years. So our businesses as well started to look into that area. And when you see small businesses or larger businesses who were reluctant to go on cloud started to explore different possibilities, that is where I personally, and that's why I said this is an experienced fact, that this was now stress testing all of the IT infrastructure, because we had to see that what are the demands. Is public cloud a suitable option? Is private cloud a suitable option for these type of customers, because they were never into a cloud business? So I think this was an eye-opener for me as well. However, the questions that I personally also asked our customers is, why would you want to do this? And we saw globally in different reasons across different geographies, we saw different reasons why would customer want to do this. So some were very keen that they have to go onto the cost reduction side, because having on-premise solutions, traditionally those large enterprise software that is hosted on premise, means cost. And when what other thing that COVID-19 did is pushing everybody against the wall in terms of resilience, in terms of cost. How would you build resilient strategies and have those costs and those financials and commercials backing you up in situations like this? So is cost reduction a vision? That's what we asked. Or do you really want to gain agility, flexibility? Because of course, this is a larger area of customization when you have everything on premise, highest degree of control and highest degree of customization that you can have. But that doesn't give you enough flexibility, because then you're bound by the heavily customized applications, heavily customized codes. And if you have vendors doing that for you, you're stuck with those vendors, right? Because your codes are customized. So I still remember it was 2019, I believe, that I was giving a talk at Frankfurt School of Business. And I was heavily impressed by the students that were out there, young students, and they asked a question, because for them it's difficult to understand legendary businesses like Oracle, SAP, to understand that how heavily customized some of these enterprise resource software or those applications have been. And their question was, how do you sustain that? How much cost would this be to a business when there is so much customization that has gone in? And we know that there are so many businesses and clients out there that have been running this for the last 20 plus years. And over the years, the level and degree of customization has gone so deep into their code that they can't even see the light of the day. Like, where would we be? And to give businesses agility to move faster, to adopt any type of innovation that comes in, that could probably be another reason why they want to get away from all of that. So this journey is going to be difficult, longer, but still you have to take that journey. So that was another thing that we saw. Or we also realized, and that's what I explained before in terms of COVID-19, where commerce applications, e-commerce solutions or e-commerce applications, that was becoming a big need. Why? Because your users need it now. They still need to access your product, and you see that probably you did have a website. So smaller businesses that I talk about, they did have a website somewhere, but not heavily, nicely used or heavily used or even nicely designed in a way, because everything was kind of in-store experience. But then we started seeing that we needed to be nicer, we needed to be more flexible, attach it with the digital modes of payment and stuff. So that is where we see that your users need it now. You have to run your business online, so your users need it now. Sometimes that also happens that your customers actually are having a lot of budget, and that's normally for the larger businesses. They have lots of money at hand. So what do? Maybe, just invest in cloud. We've heard about this. So maybe take one application here or take one solution here, put that out on cloud, and let's see how does that work. And that normally happens when your IT is a little bit disconnected from your business. I personally am the biggest advocate of IT and business working together. And you'll see when I explain that a little bit more, because I've been in a business where we had consulting services being given to customers, but then we realized that the traditional consulting world or that model doesn't work anymore. And to transform that entire world into a cloud type of services, that was key. But we realized that based on the questions that we were getting, is the customer said that at the end of the year, there's so much money that I've left, let's just invest in cloud and let's see how does that work. So that also happened. But there's another thing that we have to ask ourselves. I didn't receive honestly that type of a question, but this is also a sense out of experience, is because everybody's just going cloud, we should also explore it. Now, this could be a good thing or a bad thing, but is that giving you really a solid purpose to go on cloud? Because you need to all understand what's behind it. When we take a decision, when businesses take that type of a decision, what's behind it? Or, which I would vote for, is digital transformation is your vision, right? So you really want to go in a digital way. And I personally am driving another big initiative right now, which is all going towards digital way of supporting clients and delivering certain services to clients. And those are the different types of services that we'll also see when I talk further. before we get into that, when businesses try to go to cloud because of whatever purpose, whatever reason there is, there always needs to be an understanding of what's behind it, understand and assess the risks that are behind it, the advantages behind it. So when we talk about cloud, the first question that we've been getting from our clients is public cloud, private cloud, what is in there? So most of the non-cloud native, really traditional businesses, those they ask a question just between public and private cloud. But again, the terms that they use is not just public cloud and private cloud. There are statements about their current situation, which is, this is where my business is. And I can talk about a customer that we were dealing with. It's in a developing country and largest refinery business out there. And the ask was, we have probably data sovereignty laws coming in. So we might want to host our data somewhere because we have to reduce costs here, but then we also want to leverage the features of cloud. However, we would want to still keep control on our business, on our solutions. That means I would still want to be, as a customer, they say, I would still want to know how is the infrastructure actually looking like, where my solutions or services are, or applications are going to be hosted. Is there a camera on top on the cages where the infrastructure, the data center that is being used? So some customers would want to have a good control over even the infrastructure side of the house, which means not just the way infrastructure is set up, but also how often this is maintained, who maintains it, who upgrades it, and everything else. But some are absolutely okay, and those are rather the smaller businesses, or the larger businesses, they have certain portion of their solutions or applications that they want to put on cloud. So there are problem statements. And then as a company who wants to provide these services or solutions to our customers, we have to translate this considering their problem statement. So would they really want to go in a absolutely free of worry, where they don't care where my applications are hosted, I don't care, you manage it, you take care of everything. I rather, because I want to go on a digital way, I would rather want to have a platform that's given to me where I can also create new applications, right? Now that's just on a public and private, but then what we're seeing with more mature customers that are already running on cloud, or rather the smaller ones that are emerging pure cloud native, they start talking about multi-cloud, distributed cloud, because of course there is a variety of solutions and software and applications that they have, and they will rather want to understand, if I take cloud from one vendor or one company, but I have other software as well, so can I also combine all of that in a cloud environment? But maybe like a multi-cloud, which is all kind of public cloud together, all kind of private clouds together, or rather distributed cloud, then how am I going to ensure integration across different clouds? Or I probably, if I'm very simple business, I would say this part of my business, of my software, actually goes on to the private cloud because of the data security or data privacy type of reasons. But for the other, I'm actually okay if that goes on a public cloud as well. But explaining this to the business is key, because their problem statements, their requirements need to be translated exactly into what would fit for them. And there's another option, by the way, beyond all of that, and that is your own cloud infrastructure. So we call this like cloud at home. And that's where we see that there are some customers who, like I said, are still willing and interested to have full control on their infrastructure. So they could still have it in their own environment, on premise type of a data center. But the way this is maintained and delivered, those type of managed services that are operating their applications on that cloud, is given to a vendor. So that option is also available. So I think with the different enhancements or evolution that we're seeing in a cloud world, I would say the options are really endless. But as a business, we need to understand what is required for what type of business. And those are, we'll see probably on the following slide, absolutely driven by the geographical constraints. So there are data laws in different countries, and we see that from Europe to Americas or to Africa, for example. We see those type of laws that are guiding businesses to choose different types of clouds. Now, I also I do a deep study on the research that's published by some of the analysts, and we saw, this is before COVID, and I'm sure these numbers have changed, that the public cloud adoption, we all say, is increasing, and more companies also want to go on public cloud because they've experienced some part of private cloud and they feel more confident, but all to go onto the pure cloud. But also at the same time, there are lots of evolutions and enhancements happening in the space of public cloud, be it related to security or data privacy. There are also lots of enhancements happening there. So the businesses have more trust in going to public cloud, taking that next step. But still, less than 20% of the total IT expenditure was allocated to public cloud. This is before COVID. And we see that changes in it already, like I said, in the last 1.5 years, where smaller part of applications or smaller businesses are actually willing to go on a public cloud environment. Now, what type of infrastructure would you choose? That depends really on your needs, right? And cloud computing, and that is one of the enhancements I would say that we're seeing in a cloud world, is that this cloud computing models, those are increasing a lot in terms of efficiencies. There are new ways of cloud computing that are coming in. One of the things that we see is IaaS and PaaS that are being combined. So those boundaries between IaaS and PaaS are being merged today. So most of the top vendors that you will see, the top companies that you'll see that are providing, be it Microsoft Azure or Amazon Web Services or Google or Alibaba, they do provide very good services in terms of IaaS and PaaS together. But that's also because I think the traditional IaaS versus PaaS is, or standalone IaaS and PaaS is not something which is attractive to a lot of businesses today, as they do start to understand what cloud can do for them. We are seeing more and more this cloud infrastructure and platform services called the CIPS. Those are being combined now. And that is an experience that most of the businesses would like to have. That I host everything on the infrastructure. Okay, I'm not worried about my hardware. The costs are being also reduced in that category. But then I don't want to have an IT staff at my end to manage that operations of the infrastructure. Because when the idea or the intention or your purpose is to go on a digital transformation or reduce your cost or become more agile and flexible in that way, you would rather want to outsource all of that to a vendor that can do this better for you. And as they own the infrastructure, they know the infrastructure so much better, they can also operate your applications in that space much more better. So we also see some of the trends like cloud infrastructure and platform services that I talked about are actually going to be the key offering in the next 4 to 5 years. Especially these hyperscalers that I mentioned, they are building more and more capabilities in that space. Now, the data center that we know, traditional data center, that is no longer the center of an org's data anymore. So there are different locations of the data centers that businesses choose. Your primary can be in one location, your secondary can be in another location completely. We see still many cases, those are still surprising, honestly, to me, especially the businesses that are running globally. They would not want to have their primary data center and secondary at the same location. Now, when you distribute your data centers like that, you also need to have very strong integration features that your data and applications are talking to each other. And when primary fails, the secondary picks up immediately without the customer knowing any fallback or any type of a dip in the performance. And I think what we also see is on the features that we're talking about, it shouldn't actually matter if your data centers are somewhere on premise or in a different type of a domain. But the most important thing is that what they're supposed to do in terms of the integration, that's key, and that's what they should do. And now, in addition to IaaS and PaaS, what we're also experiencing is the SaaS part of it. So imagine if a business has both ES and PaaS given outsourced by to a vendor and everything is taken care of. But when it comes to building applications or sustaining or managing your applications on top, you would still need to have either your own IT staff taking care of it, or you would need to outsource that to another vendor. And that is a large space where most of the vendors, the big vendors, are actually operating the service, the SIs are actually operating in that space. Now, if I look at pure implementation consulting, that is kind of losing the focus in that space, because we're not looking at, when we go cloud, we're not looking at customizations, we're not looking at implementations. Those are inbuilt solutions that are given by most of the SaaS vendors out there, those applications. And more and more attraction happens when ES, PaaS, and SaaS are all combined. So either one vendor is actually taking care of that, or you rather just have two vendors that are talking to each other, they are partners, and you have a hyperscaler giving you ES and PaaS experience, and then you have an application or a software vendor that's actually building, giving you that platform where they can manage your applications that are running on the hyperscaler. And it also gives you an opportunity to build your applications on top of that platform. So I think that is where I personally have been experiencing a lot of attraction, that more customers are willing to go in that space. Otherwise, imagine you've got 2 or 3 different vendors, and then you need another vendor coming in to orchestrate across all of those vendors. So most benefit that we see is being achieved when you have these 3 XaaS, everything as a service, right? That is being achieved. I personally, my favorite term is to call this solution as a service. And that is including everything, your platform, your service, the software, and your infrastructure. So when you combine all of that, that's what I like to rather call SaaS as solution as a service. And when one of the examples that you probably will also see is MS365, for example, is replacing MS Exchange. So that's just Microsoft does from an ES, PaaS, combining, removing those boundaries and combining those things. Now, when it comes to also software or bringing automation, I think more and more vendors, whether they are on the infrastructure side or on the software side, there is a lot of momentum on building automation. So some of the examples like a client copy or a backup needs to be taken, system restarts need to happen, early watch reports, for example, they need to be produced, and you have certain KPIs from a business standpoint that need to be highlighted. Rather than having a manual intervention, everybody is looking at automating these type of things, because that not just makes the life of a customer, as a customer, it'll make it easy for you because the costs are reduced, and then you don't really have to worry about planning, sitting down with a consultant and planning when is my downtime and how much would my downtime would be, and if something goes wrong, I have somebody on the call all the time. So I believe that momentum and focus on automation at infrastructure as well as software level is key. And DevOps is another trend. It's not really a trend, it's becoming a need now, because those are going to be the fundamentals for you to operate, for any business to operate in that cloud environment. Everything needs to be so fast now that you can't afford to have a waterfall model in your development as well as your release cycles. So something that completely surprised me, it was not even recent, I think that was around 4 years ago. We have a customer, a banking customer, and their rollout of the new features in a banking environment, their rollout was 2 weeks of new features that they wanted, 2 weeks. And this was a neobank who was completely different in that space of traditional banking, absolutely cloud native, because it was a new bank coming up and neobank. And so they had this DevOps environment where everything was being developed and tested at the same time and being rolling out. So 2-week cycle is something that I personally 3-4 years ago I wasn't aware of. So I was still in that zone of you have a waterfall model, everything gets developed, dumped into your dev environment, gets tested in QA, and then you roll it out on the production system. I don't think that is for most of the clients that is true anymore. BC, DR, so business continuity, disaster recovery, those are where we're seeing automation happening a lot, and distributed cloud strategies. This is key. I was just coming off a call with a client where we are again talking about a global customer who wants to have a presence across the three main regions, main continent, and they want to have their cloud environment, the data centers in across different locations, but ensuring connectivity between them, data center as your edge location, these are key. It's starting to become more as a standard now. So another thing that purely from an infrastructure standpoint, what we see as becoming a design fundamental, Kubernetes, serverless. Now, those I would say are still for the more mature type of businesses that have an experience in cloud. They know how to build cloud native applications. They know if I'm creating applications that are container, that I can put in containers, and then those clusters that I create, my Kubernetes can actually provide that orchestration platform. So more legendary businesses would not be in that space, would not be ready in that space. And then having private cloud as more your primary a data center, your primary cloud system, but then you can use public cloud for your backups and recovery. So those are some of the trends that I personally have been experiencing with the customers. But with that, a little bit of a reality is that comes into the picture in terms of what the wishes and the desires are and what we see theoretically happening. The reality is a bit different. When you talk about enterprise providers, enterprise software businesses that have huge systems, a complicated environment because of these systems, they still are shy of getting into a cloud world. We did talk in 2018 October, so I still have to go before COVID times. There was a customer in Europe who asked me a question: why do you think that we should go on cloud? Everything runs fine. I see no problem. My users are not asking me to do things any differently. My IT staff has been telling me, so this was a CEO, by the way, so we were talking about business. So what do you expect from a business? And his simple requirements were that don't sell me anything, I want to reduce the cost, but everything that I have from you, make it work more efficiently. And that's when we started to have the cloud conversation, and that's when this question came up: why should I go on cloud? Are you trying to sell me something where I should pay because everything is just working normal? And we see that the same customer changed the storyline just last year. And that is because the on-premise world is not working, and it has to go. And they were driven completely by the demand from the users, because they had to go on cloud at least for one part of the application. That was exactly the e-commerce part, that they needed to build a web application. They wanted to put their products out there, which they were not doing before because everything was just on the ground. So some geographies and some legendary customers are still going to lag behind a little bit, I would say. And this is where we see that whether you talk about different geographies or also different industries. So retail would probably, you'll expect, would go on cloud. This is the best way. But when you talk about anything in the financial industry, you'll still see here a little bit of concerns that, not all of the systems, maybe some, maybe not, but data sovereignty rules, those guide on the cloud adoption of the businesses. And one of the examples that I gave, where we are personally serving a customer with the data center across the continent, and in the country of this customer, now there's going to be a new data sovereignty rule introduced. Because of that, they need to have the data within the same country, exactly within the same country, not even continent. And if that happens, there is no data center available in that country. This is one of the developing countries. What do we do in that case? So there is definitely one option that we're proposing to the customer, is to have a cloud on-premise, cloud at home. So we manage everything that is from an IaaS and PaaS side, but also bringing in the SaaS experience. But the data center, the infrastructure is still there on the customer ground. So I believe these rules, these these type of dependencies would always play a big role in how businesses and how many businesses would actually adopt cloud. But another thing that we cannot avoid is that it also triggers inside politics. And I would go back to this example that I talked about, where the CEO said in 2018, late 2018, that I don't think I'd need to go on cloud. This is probably your another tactic to sell something. But when I had a different conversation with the CIO understood what benefits IT would have when it comes to moving to cloud. Slowly, step by step, right? Let's take one piece of your application and move it to cloud. But the CIO's concerns were very clear that I cannot sell it to my CEO. And I personally believe that this is where I started, a purpose-driven cloud strategy. And I think as we are moving more and more into this cloud world, we need to have more focus on the values. What are the different tactics or different changes or transformation policies that we are adopting on the IT side? It's not just an IT budget anymore, that we reserve a certain budget for IT. IT is just supposed to be at the back end and see that everything at the back end works fine. IT is actually merging with the business. So you need to understand what business value you can drive. Everything that is done on the IT side, what outcomes can it achieve for the business, how revenue can be increased, cost can be decreased, profitability can be increased. All of that can be done using IT, but a bit differently. So some countries, some businesses do understand it, they've understood it actually very, very well, but some are still kind of struggling in that space. And then of course it becomes a people level politics as well, that why would IT want to come forward where normally business is? And of course, there's also a concern about a longer transition times, especially when there is a lot of customization and you have intricate solution landscape. You're always concerned about how long is it going to take for me to transition everything onto the cloud. And that's why I would say you don't have to start with everything at one go. See what's important for the business, again, for the business, not for IT, because unless things are driving value, you'll always be hit by a wall. You'll always hit a wall and you will not be able to move forward because it's not giving you value. And how long does it take? So the transition times, and then there is also uncertainty when you talk to some of the businesses that how is this going to run? Because, hey, listen, my solution landscape is not like that. Plus, I know that I would want to, I would need to invest more money into this. It's going to take me money as well as time, but what I'm actually getting out of it. And then something that we should never forget is when any business decides to go onto the cloud, it's a big transition. And training employees, your own employees, is going to be the most important task, that people understand that as well. So I've been in the last 7 years in a cloud transformation business. So one of the biggest challenge that I experienced was just even making everybody around me believe that if we turn this whole thing into a cloud way of doing things, we would rather be more profitable other than continue to do it. And what happens in that space, you start to bring in some of the automation features, and then people have concerns about their jobs. Am I not going to be needed anymore? If I'm a consultant who's actually sitting down with the customer, implementing a certain solution, having a design thinking workshop, implementing something, if everything is just running over the cloud, my job will not be needed. So I think people aspect and there's mind shift, that is key. That needs to change, and that has to go on a bigger picture. And I would, that experience, I mean, this goes so much in detail that I would love to share, but considering just the time, I would stay away from it. But I would say slowly, once you've given, again, a bigger view to the employees, and that applies to all businesses, right? Businesses that are providing services, businesses that are consuming services, it applies to everybody. When you see the bigger picture, you see that how much more can I do as an individual, as a person, as a human, while the not needed task is actually being done by something that is automated. And another thing is, it again goes to a little bit of a politics. Some of the big businesses, they do deal with 3 to 4 to sometimes even 5 vendors who are managing their different types of environments, whether somebody is managing certain set of applications, somebody is managing another set of infrastructure. When you decide as a business to go on cloud, you would also want to consolidate, reinvent your vendor strategy. And that is where some politics also comes in. Which one goes where, and then how do you integrate, and which one actually makes sense in a new world, and so on. But this is something which is unavoidable, I would say, and we as businesses have to go through that path, because I believe there's no way around it. So how would I say understanding the different types of infrastructure models and different types of cloud computing, which I always believe is, now cloud is not about what's behind it. It's rather what you can do with it. And we've seen that with different variations that we do with our customers. So building a holistic cloud strategy, which is purpose driven. So that is key. First of all, let's define the right purpose. And that's also my advice whenever I talk to the customers, is define what you want to achieve, your outcomes, your values. What impact would it have on your organization? And what type of risks could be there, which you should be aware of, by the way, and we can address those while building your cloud strategy. And when we talk about building those, there are automation features. There are how I should say that is, the risks that you could always have is when you bring in automation, how long would it take and how much would you have to work with your own employees in that space. But the point is, take those steps now. Start small, and maybe start with a private cloud that gives you more control, that gives you more a feeling that I'm still in control of what I'm doing. And I would say most of the large customers that we deal with today are not comfortable with going on public cloud, only because I don't think most of the larger businesses are ready with accepting the fact that any for example upgrade that comes in, I have to take it, and it just kind of it goes through without my intervention, without my knowledge, and sometimes I don't like the features of it, I can't control it. And this is with most of my clients. So currently I'm looking after Europe, and I see that a lot, where customers still want to host it on a certain private cloud environment. They do have a multi-cloud, but still it's all mostly in the area of the private cloud. And another thing I would say is building a holistic vision. IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, that's easier. It is going to be a little bit of a dependency, let's say, on a certain vendor. But when you have 2 vendors working in partnership, one from a software side and another one from a hyperscaler, being a hyperscaler, you have a good view, you have an end-to-end view. And I said that already. I'm a biggest advocate of providing solution as a service. How does a vendor do that? If I'm a vendor, how do I do that? Taking care of your infrastructure, giving you that platform that you can use to build your cloud applications and then run it the way you want to, taking care of your databases underneath. So giving you full transparency. I think this, as to my business, to my customer, this should be a good view, that if you trust your vendor to take care of all of these things, you don't even have to have your IT staff sitting on top of it. Have some people that can actually drive strategy rather than getting into an execution mode. And beyond all that, every business needs to keep in mind that even if you do all that, automation is an imperative. Whether your vendor does that or you bring that in, it is an imperative, because that's where you have the maximum value of cloud coming in. And of course, no matter what we do, you'll still need people doing different things, right? Thinking differently, defining strategy, and they need to be skilled and empowered, reskilled probably, and sometimes even unlearn and relearn in a way that would empower them to take decisions to go further into the cloud world. So, well, that's That's what out of my experience I would say. And with that, Jose, I think I am good. Let's look at some of the questions.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much, Ashima, for that great comprehensive view of where your journey has been there. I'm gonna ask you to stop showing your screen, and I'll come in here, and we're gonna go through some of the questions that our audience has submitted while you're presenting. Let me just capture those here. Um, um, One of the questions that came in actually nearly the end of your talk here is when you're talking about um, the, the purposes for the cloud purpose, and setting that cloud purpose. So Katerina Kamaeva is a practitioner in this area, and she's curious if you could elaborate a little bit more on defining the right purpose for your cloud strategy. So if you can go a little bit deeper on that, what type of purposes that you have?
Okay, interesting, right? Because those that definition of purpose and understanding of purpose is key. Some of the examples that I shared about my customers are going in the direction of I need to be more flexible and agile, because the way we're doing business today is making us dependent on some particular vendors a lot, because every change that we want to do, every innovation that we want to introduce, it goes back into the same vendor because that code is heavily customized. We just can't do some of the features. We can't build in some of the features. If you want to roll out something, it has to go through the, again, traditional cycles of release cycles that we all know from in traditional world, and that is making us slow. How can I get more flexible and agile? And that means that if this is your purpose, that you want to serve your customers, because I'm just talking about a B2B customer right now, but if I'm a business who's dealing with the end users, that is providing, let's say, different ice cream flavors to the end users. Why, if I'm introducing a new flavor of ice cream, why do I have to go through the release cycle that used to be very traditional? I want to introduce it in a plug and play mode. So there is a new flavor, bring that in. All the commercials behind it are all in. Customers can click and choose. There's a new application that I want to adopt, a new UI I want to adopt, but I can't because my IT doesn't enable me to do that. So if your purpose is to serve your users in a faster and more nicer, today's modernizing your IT modernized way, then that is, I would say, a clear purpose. Just one example of a purpose-driven strategy.
That's very helpful, and you alluded to that, especially in large organizations. Sometimes it's hard to align those purposes internally with the leaders of the organization. I can only imagine the challenges. But moving on to the next question here, I'm curious about the one of the things that emerged on the questions has to do with uh, where do you see cloud strategies going in the next few months? I mean, clearly there has been the pandemic has been a shock to the system, and there has been an acceleration of digital platforms and cloud, and for out of necessity to function. And so I don't know if we have reached some sort of stability level yet, but what do you see happening in the next 12 months with respect to cloud strategies? Is it more about just making sure that the basics work well? Is that new functionality that's being built for cloud? What do you see in the marketplace?
Oh, the biggest trend that I've seen is the IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS that I referred to. So some of our customers are already raising their hands, choosing to go to the hyperscalers and asking us to provide services on top. When I talk about, so let's take a package, a simple package that says to the customers, we're going to manage the applications for you. You don't have to worry about this. But by the way, this is optional. What you can do is choose a hyperscaler, and that's your infrastructure. We'll come in and manage the cloud managed services. For example, the technical part of it, which is ensuring that your integration with your hardware works, will give you an indication when your certain HANA database, for example, so I'm just giving you an example of SAP database, but any database, underlying database, is actually running out of memory. When do you need more hardware? So I will manage your system integration with your infrastructure well, but as an optional package, you can take the application stuff on top. more and more customers are saying yes to that because they see how easy that gets for them when everything is with one vendor. So hyperscaler plus a software vendor joining hands together and customers choosing to go to one vendor instead of having multiple vendors is the trend that I'm seeing. But also in the same environment, I'm also seeing that some of the customers are getting used to the flavor of it. In 2020 alone, I saw many businesses adopting the e-commerce applications. They're already raising their hands. Hey, can you also get our people HR systems on cloud? Which options do you have? I would like to explore. So those are the things that I'm seeing where customers are getting more and more interested in choosing cloud.
Ashima, this is fantastic insights. We really appreciate you taking the time to share them with us. We're out of time right now, but we could definitely talk about this for much longer. Thank you so much for taking the time of your busy schedule, sharing your expertise with our global audience today. We're very much appreciative of that.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you, everybody. This has been a lovely time here for me to talk to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Ashima Raheja, who is the head of client delivery management for SAP EMA. Fantastic coverage, fantastic insights on cloud strategies, the acceleration of cloud implementation, the needed support from an IT infrastructure standpoint, very much at the core of what our conference is all about. Some of you asked again about how do I have access to this presentation, Jose. Remember, we will send you sometime by the end of next week. We'll all register participants will receive an email with a link and password for access to all of the recordings that you can watch at your own leisure. So thanks again for our sponsors, Lean9X, for making that available to our global community. Thanks to our conference producers, Brian Raffel, for Vijay Bajaj, the CEO of Proqis, for creating this environment where great ideas and great people can connect. So very excited about this. This wraps up our day 2 of the conference, and tomorrow we come back for the final day. Day 3 has a treat for you in storage. I will tell you that we're gonna kick off with another great leader from SAP in a completely different part of the world. We're gonna have Raul Lodi, who is the Senior Director of SAP Artificial Intelligence, talking to us directly about the challenges of realizing artificial intelligence use cases for enterprises around the world. So Raul has presented to us in the past, is a fantastic presenter, a leader of artificial intelligence at a global scale. So really looking forward to that presentation. We'll follow that up with, we'll go from India to Italy, and we're going to have the leader from Advanced Service Business Development for Cisco, Giuseppe Barreto, talking to us directly from Italy about the migration of calling and contact centers to cloud, and his experiences and the things to know in advance on those operations that he has led for Cisco. We'll then migrate to biopharmaceutical, if you will, but forget about that. It's really a leader who has been across multiple industries, and he has this art of blending business problems and the state-of-the-art technical solutions. I'm talking about Nilesh Ajmani, who's the lead enterprise architect, senior data scientist and consultant for Biogen and a number of very well-known organizations. He's going to talk to us about the cloud transition and what it means for your business. And then we'll finish the day with a senior partner for K&L Gates, who is going to discuss with us economic incentives and related to the topic of IT infrastructure and cloud strategies. A fascinating review of the economics that organizations and society go through in making some of its decisions. So excited about the day ahead. Thank you so much for spending this day with us, and whatever you are in the world, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.